Good day, Chandler.
Here.
Yeah, he can't
Can't hear
hear
you.
you.
But
I'm,
hello.
I'm all about the guest appearances.
Tell him I love the bathrooms.
He loves the bathrooms. Justine is there right now, his girlfriend. But yeah,
Oh, very good. How's your afternoon going? Here we are, armed and thirsty again.
it's actually pretty good, better than the early morning. But I'm great.
It's been an eventful day for you, hasn't it, John?
It has, so I mean, the long and short is that there was an interesting episode at my home where actually a SWAT team came looking for somebody who wasn't there, doesn't live there. They scooted off the premises, but it was a little excitement. Yeah.
Well, with the type of recruiting we've been doing and with the growth of the brokerage, it was only a matter of time before people started investigating.
Well, exactly. It's like, oh, you are my Jack? Where is Mr. Fox?
Mm,
It's in Scottsdale. Sorry. Yeah.
wrong address.
Hmm.
He's up on the Kevlar, guys.
Yeah. All
So
right. Well, anyway, today we were going to talk about, I thought we might talk about, you mentioned this, how do you show your value? You know?
yeah, I think we've been told we're supposed to be doing that, right? National Association of Realtors came out last year after the big lawsuit, and
Yeah.
you really got to be better at presenting your value. So, and what does that mean? Honestly, like, what does that mean to people? And how have brokerages gone about teaching agents that work for them, coaching them through the ability to demonstrate and convey their value?
I would say that this has been a harder subject for buyers agents than for listing agents. And it's not that there's less value by any means. In fact, perhaps there could be even more in some respects. But because of the history of the real estate industry, listing agents had to show their value to get a listing, whereas buyers agents pretty much just picked up buyers and, went to open houses and said, "What are you
Wait,
looking for?"
wait. It's like a client of mine. His daughter. So this is classic.
Mhm.
This is a long-term friend of mine, great clients, and his daughter at the time started talking about me as the guy with the magic key. I
The
had
guy
the
with the
magic key, the guy who could get us into homes, right? That was, in her eyes, that was my value. I had the magic key.
Okay, so this has been a sort of an ongoing discussion for me for decades. I do remember back maybe 20 years ago sitting on a board, the MLS board, I think, when the subject of Zillow came up and how Zillow wanted to feed from the multiple listing service. And oh my God, we can't do that because if we do that, what's our value? And I said, okay, wait. No, our value is not to open the door. The opening the door is great physically, but let's just extend that. Let's make make it into, a simile of a sense. What are we opening the door to? We're opening the door to home ownership. We're opening the door to getting through a transaction without any kind of real issues. We're opening the door to, to more relationships, to building community, a whole lot of things that we're opening the door to that have nothing to do with opening with a key the door to a house.
You mean there's more to a buyer's agent than a magic key and a link to some homes that are available?
I should think that if you had a buyer's agent worth their salt, then they would be able to give you a very good idea, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, what is going on in this particular market? Where are we at? What are the statistics? How long are houses sitting on the market? Are we in a market that's slated more towards a seller or towards a buyer? Because how you behave as a person interested in finding a house is wildly different depending upon those two stations in the marketplace, That'd be one.
It's obvious to me that so many people don't really understand. And shame on us, as practitioners for the longest period of time. By and large, many people didn't really understand what we did as agents, unless you had a really good agent that was taking exceptional care of you.
Yep.
The amount of value that is brought forth is very deep. I mean, there aren't any other real sales. If you want to look at it as a sales job, it's really more of a service job.
Mhm.
But you have a license to transact real estate. Here in the state of Arizona, we have constitutional right to actually practice law in that
Yep.
area. And people don't understand the difference between a salesperson and a fiduciary responsibility.
And that is the key. When I was a buyer's agent in the early part of my, career, I focused on the, on the code of ethics. And because for me, it was almost a holy document. The way that you were taking care of other people without thought about how much money you're making, the way that you were really putting their interests first. And I came to realize that a good buyer's agent should be like the super ego, the smarter head for the people, because buying a house is emotional and you can get like completely caught up in small things or big things, maybe not looking at what you should look at. But if you have somebody who's looking out for your interests, then it's not just price, it's whether or not to even buy the damn thing, for
I mean,
example.
if the code of ethics were on stone, I mean, let's just say for a moment, Moses wouldn't have been able to carry them anywhere. There's a lot to unpack
Yes.
in the code of ethics that we subscribe to, that we adhere to as quote unquote realtors, all capital realtors, as members of the National Association of Realtors. And I don't think people understand the depth of what we adhere to, nor do they understand the amount of liability as well as responsibility that we adhere to as licensees, especially here in Arizona.
Yep.
We are not a quote unquote, as some states are called, attorney state, where you do have to utilize the services
Mhm.
of an attorney for closing purposes. Um, I mean, you've done a heck of a lot of deals. You've done a whole lot more brokering than I have. You probably at the $10 billion level. I'm at the $1 billion level. I'm just a little neophyte over here. But in the amount of contracts that I've been involved in, I'd say it's absolutely far less than 1/10 of 1% of the time that people actually do engage an attorney on any level of transacting real
Right.
estate, at least here in Arizona.
Yeah, well, here in Arizona, you don't need to. And why would you have that expense if you have somebody who is really following the law, following the code of ethics, looking out for your interests? That we have, and we have a pretty good track record of that.
Well, and especially on the residential side, I encounter it far more when it comes to the commercial side of things. Attorneys certainly get involved at a much higher level. I think there are some complexities with those contracts, and we're also fantastic beneficiaries here locally in Arizona.
Mhm.
Our Arizona Association of Realtors, I think, has done a masterful job over the years of crafting a boilerplate type of contract, and with all the other disclosures and the addendums and the things that go along with that,
Mhm.
buyer advisory, all these things, so many great resources for information and to balance out a transaction. I think it's a little bit tipped personally. I think it's tipped in favor of the buyer more than the seller.
Oh,
That's
it absolutely is. Having and and I'll say that I understand the historical reasons for that, but it absolutely is tipped more towards the buyer than the seller. So,
I mean, you could fail on your loan on the last day and still get your earnest money back here in many cases based upon the basic contract.
good to see you, Chandler. Bye bye.
Good to see you, Chandler. All the best.
Yeah. Also something that people don't realize is that quite a few of the top agents in our industry, and some that are not quite top, do a tremendous amount of volunteer work, not just for the communities that they live in, but also for the state. So when we're talking about in the state association, so when we're talking about this remarkable contract we have, which because I think it is a fabulous piece of work. It does a great job of helping sellers do what they need to do to protect themselves and helping buyers do what they need to do to go in eyes wide open. And if you have somebody who's just, reasonable person and doesn't muck it up too much, you can get through a transaction without having a budget, any kind of a big mess. And the reason for that is that the association, which is largely run in terms of the work that's done by volunteers, has gone through this contract over the years, over and over again, to fix little problems that happen with that contract. And the process is kind of amazing. These various volunteers, and I've been on this panel, get together, they talk through the problem, they come up with a solution, write it down, and then it sends out to roughly 3,000 people around the state to take a look at and make their comments on. And these are not just idiots. These are like lawyers and escrow people and, brokers around the state who have a lot of experience. So yeah, sometimes there are a lot of comments. That all comes back to the committee, and those comments are reviewed. They make any changes that might be needed at that point, and then it goes to the executive committee for approval. So this is a huge process, and a lot of people are involved, well over 3,000 when you get down to it, people who are in the industry. I don't know of another industry that has that kind of peer review for the work that is done on a regular basis.
Yeah, I'd say very few. And then, you know, once you have that available to you, and it's a tool, right?
Mhm.
So it's a tool that we have available to us. And there's a lot of areas within that tool, within the framework for negotiation, for structure, and for strategy, if you will,
Yep.
depending upon the client's needs.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of those extreme values that when you're working with a very skilled professional, they know how to use that contract, if you will, that tool to really navigate things to the client's highest advantage by informing and including the client in all the decision making along the way, providing the options, if you will, the pros and cons of the options that are available to them, and then following through with that client's needs depending upon what their goals are, what their situation is, and what's most important to them. And again, it's not a tool that doesn't have any flaws to it. It's not a tool that, if used inappropriately, doesn't have some repercussions. And you really have to be a tremendous practitioner to use it at the highest level, in my opinion.
So getting back to how to show your value, I'm thinking it's not just on the agent's side. To some extent, because of the way in which real estate has been done for decades, people don't really think about interviewing buyers and agents. They don't think about that. I mean, when you're selling a house, you interview listing agents and find out who's the best to do the job for your particular house. But how often do buyers come in and say, I'd like to interview 2 or 3 buyers agents and decide who would really work well for me? Because that's the part that is missing. You know, I mean, yes, buyers agents need to be able to explain what their value is, but it's a little hard to do that if you don't get asked to begin with. And if you only have one person that's asking. So that's your buyer, and nobody else is coming through the door. There's less of a need to go ahead and explain deeply what it is you do for the client, I think.
And with a lot of the changes now,
Mhm.
a buyer, if they're going to engage an agent and start looking at property with an agent, they have to have a written agreement, a very defined, non-ambiguous, agreement with an agent
Right,
that really lines out the responsibilities and their compensation, their relationship with their agent
right.
prior to even going to look at a single property.
Yeah. Of course, the exception here is when there is an agent that's representing the seller doing an open house. There doesn't need to be a writing as long as it's clear that they are representing the seller only, and that you're coming in the door to listen to what the seller would like you to hear,
I
basically.
have that here in about 45 minutes. Not even an open house. So was contacted by some people that are here from Texas. They want to see a listing of mine today at 2:30. So in that case, it's very clear that I represent the seller. They found my information, my representation as such, online somewhere,
Mhm.
and they want to take a look at this property. So I'll be
Well,
meeting them
put
there
what is one of
today
the
at
tricky questions though,
right.
Because if they say to you, we bought bunches of houses over in Texas and we don't really need a buyer's agent, we would like to save some money and by by representing ourselves. I think that's a questionable way to proceed.
It's
And
very questionable. I find that, um, and I had this conversation actually just yesterday uh, regarding this. I find that most people who do that don't get nearly as favorable a terms and price as they would have if an agent was involved in working on their behalf. Uh,
but Lloyd, it's not just that. If I look at the contract carefully that we use here in Arizona, there's almost 2 dozen places that are timelines the buyer has to follow, and not all of them are obvious. In fact, if this is the first time you've looked at this 9-page legal document, you may not really see any but one or two. But they are peppered throughout the contract. And if the agent is only representing the seller, they really can't give advice to the buyer about what should be done when.
Correct. Yeah, because once you cross that path, that line,
Mhm.
you start providing advice, you start helping. What kind of agency are you in?
We're probably in dual agency now, but it's certainly going to be some kind of, implied agency.
Correct. Not a
And
written agreement,
yeah,
but you have demonstrated in some way, you inferred that you are here to help them. And now you sign up for all the responsibility. And people don't understand when it comes to real estate, there is not a partial liability. You buy the whole ranch. So whenever that problem comes and you are like you're talking about, it could be implied. Certainly, if that's the case, it is 100% dual agency. And now you have undisclosed dual agency as well, because if the seller that you've already been representing is unaware of how you're assisting the other party, you've never disclosed to your seller, nor did you get the permission
mhm,
to represent the buyer in any kind of a representation capacity. You're supposed to have the sellers for, number one and first loyalty, unless you have written agreement in advance that
yep,
this is allowable. And now you've got the biggest problem that you would want to have as an agent or a broker. You're not going to be thrilled with that situation. I think most people back themselves into a corner on that because I think in general, people, agents especially, it's a service industry. We are geared up to help. I
yeah.
think we naturally want to say yes when it comes to helping someone. But when you cross that line, you may be in a really precarious situation just because you're trying to justify, well, I was really just trying to help. And this was actually for my seller because I was trying to get this transaction to go through and close. Well, judge and jury, why were you trying to get it close? Well, I think it was just going to be good for my seller client. Well, did you receive some compensation? Well, yeah. And how much was it? You throw out that amount, you're like, judge and jury is going to sit there and go, well, did you have an incentive yourself to keep this transaction going without disclosing to your people that you're assisting the other party at a capacity you didn't have permission to do?
Right.
We don't win very often in court.
No. In fact, I've had sellers call me to say, my agent is not comfortable with this unrepresented buyer coming in. Why do you think that's so? And I would say, Mr. Seller, Ms. Seller, what you need is to have that buyer be represented. If they have representation, that's going to take a whole load of risk off your shoulders and your agent's shoulders. And it's going to be a more smooth transaction for you if they have their own representation and understand what needs to be done. Do you want this deal to fall out midway or, towards the end? Do you want to have to fight for earnest money? Probably not. Probably what we want to do is get the house sold smoothly. And you already planned to have, some compensation, or you didn't, for representation. When that buyer came in the door, then the best thing would be for them to be represented. That's just my opinion, and I don't care who represents them. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it comes to change gears a little bit, even beyond the contract, even beyond, if you will, the blocking and tackling of transactional work that we do,
Mm-hmm.
I think the value extends far beyond that. To me, value with a great agent when it comes to buyer representation is truly first understanding your client.
Yeah.
So an exceptional agent is an exceptional listener. They know how to ask all the right questions
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that how they're assisting their client is based upon their client's needs
Mm-hmm.
and not what they have preconceived notions about and what they think is best for them.
Yeah.
Because it's about the client, and the client gets to make the decisions. And so it's about understanding what those boundaries are, understanding what the needs are, and then combining all that and assisting the client to make the best decision possible, not for just the property that's going to be the right choice today,
Right.
but the one that's going to be the right choice for their intended term of use
Mm-hmm.
and or length of ownership.
No, absolutely. Just the other day, I was talking to, one of my newer agents who was taking a buyer around, and the buyer fell in love with the property that my agent thought was just a hunk of junk. And she said, "Where's my duty here?" Because I don't want her to buy this property. And so what I said is, number one, if the eyes are wide open, it's not your job to say, no, this isn't the property for you on the one hand. On the other hand, it is your job to point out anything that you think is a major concern.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I have I can't prevent somebody from buying what they want to buy,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean I have to be part of it. And I have, on a few occasions in my career, I have told people, if this is the property for you, that's fantastic. I am not the agent to represent you in this transaction.
Mm.
I feel so strongly about it that I'd rather not be part of it.
I don't think we were quite to that point, but it might
Oh,
have been more the orange shag carpeting, but
I said, well, yeah, we're talking way beyond shag carpeting here.
yeah.
If
Well,
if
Lloyd, I once listed a property
if it's a poltergeist, I mean, we got to get out of here, John.
in my
It is
description.
Halloween coming up here. Come on, who knows what's in the bottom of that pool?
Oh, no, literally. I had a piece of property, and what my description for this property was: bring your hazmat suit, please wear boots, understand that the soil may need to be scraped down 2 or 3 feet because I have no idea what toxins are in the soil. Enter the house at your own risk. It's a hoarder house, and you may not be able to get out the other side. And I have no idea what vermin are living in there. So beware. I sold that property within just days.
Some people are drawn to problems.
Yeah.
You need only look at relationships between people to know that some people just love owning other people's problems.
Yeah, don't I know? Yeah.
Mm. And then the other aspect that I think gets overlooked. It's not just overlooked by the public. It's also overlooked by everybody that's thinking about getting into this business. Because one of the things that assists an agent in exiting the business is how deeply you get involved sometimes in people's stuff.
Yeah.
Because people bring a lot of baggage to the table, a lot of emotional things, and a lot of times it is helping people to navigate through a lot of that to make ultimately great decisions when they need to be made, or to walk away from something when it's not the right thing. And that's a different level of skill to
Yes.
help people through those times, because we've all dealt with some of this. If you've been in this business for any period of time, you will certainly find yourself all the characters with things like buyer's remorse, or the couple that's not in agreement on the choice of place, the parents sometimes that enter the decision making process but they're not on the contract. Or I mean, there's a lot of dynamics, social and personal relationship dynamics, that we deal with on a daily basis.
It's true. I don't know how you demonstrate that value rather than
Oh,
just doing it. Yep.
I think a lot of it is really just being able to speak to people. And I really think listening to the client, I think they're going to get a feel whether you're going to be there for a lot of that. When it comes to dealing with sellers, one of the things is I always talk about is when there's bad news, it's not going to be a text. It's not going to be an email. Expect there to be a conversation and maybe even a face-to-face meeting.
If it's bad enough, it should be face to face. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The talk you had about buyers brought up something for me. There's this old it's almost a meme in the real estate community where people say that buyers are liars. And
Sellers or yellers. Is that where you're going to say? Is that where you're going here?
no, what I'm going is that part of the job of a real estate agent, in my opinion, is to listen to the buyers carefully, because most buyers have in their mind what it is they think they should get. Oh, we should have a view, we should have a pool, we should have this, we should have that. And then it turns out they buy something that has no view, no pool, and or whatever else.
Mm.
And the reason is because that's in the brain, but the decision to buy a house is often coming from the heart instead. They run into a house that has nothing to do with what they were looking for, and they fall in love. And once they fall in love, then it's really important for the buyer's agent to help them think things through and move through the transaction appropriately. But where I'm going with this is
Are you
when
telling me
people,
people are motivated by emotion more than logic? Is that what you're about to tell me, John?
that would be most people, not everybody, but yeah, most people. And then sometimes when it's the logic, everything has to line up, and that will never happen. So,
Well, have you ever worked with an engineer?
okay, first, my father was an engineer. So,
Please, I love my engineer clients. I love all of you people and your spreadsheets. You're wonderful. Uh, as long as all the planets line up properly and the property is in absolutely pristine shape, we're going to be just fine. But if not, we're going to have some issues.
yeah. So anyway, my point was really that in listening, you're trying to listen to what is really coming from the client rather than the words that are coming out of their mouth. And that might help guide you as a buyer's agent to help them find the house they really want. Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, and a lot of these journeys are, if you will, longer journeys than people understand, because a lot of times, I'll get the client that says, "Well, you're going to get paid X, and you're going to get what if we find a place on our first time out?" Okay. Or the seller that says, "Well, what if it sells in the first weekend?" Okay. Well, none of that's
Say
really
glory be, should that happen? Yeah.
and none of that's really true.
Yeah.
Um, because even if they've identified, if you will, the proper place or the right place on the first time you go out, or if you're fortunate enough, especially in today's market, a lot of people out there should feel we were very fortunate if we got a great offer our first weekend out of the gate. But we know that there's a long road ahead. There is so little is yet to be done. between inspections, negotiations. It's not just about getting an offer. It's not just about making an offer. It's the entire journey all the way to close. And oh, by the way, if along that path, that's not the right property or that's not the right buyer and they cancel, guess what? We get to do this all over again.
Correct.
And my compensation at that point, last time I checked, does not go up,
Zero.
right? It does not go up. So, there's it goes both ways. I'm not getting paid to do this 3 times, but if we got to do it 3 times, we're going to do it 3 times.
I saw some post about the DOJ thinking that agents should be paid hourly, and I thought, oh my God, what a boon that would be for us.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, not
What-
if you're selling $2 or $3
that
million
would
homes a year, but on the other hand,
sadly that would put a lot of undue pressure, quite frankly, on clients.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God, if we cancel, we got to start paying them again to do X. I don't know if I want to do that. Quite frankly, some people aren't going to want to do that. So they might just adhere to the contract, finish it out, even though it's not the property for them. So I hope we don't get to that point.
I'm
I'm
not
sure
looking
there's
for
some out there that do that, but good luck. Good luck. I think that compromises a lot of the sanctity, if you will, of the relationship.
it.
Um, and then if I can get paid, there are going to be people out there. Hey, I might encourage them to cancel this contract because I can get paid to do this all again. There are some people out there that don't always.
So Lloyd,
Go ahead.
think about it and tell me, think about your worst buyer. Let's put it that way. How many, worst means it just took you forever to get them in contract? How many deals blew apart? How many offers were written? I mean,
Well, no, I wouldn't even call them my worst. And there's several that I could put in this category that it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's my worst, but maybe challenging. I can remember the first boom when it happened, and I had the most lovely couple, wonderful people, but they needed assistance with closing costs. And we were writing offers left and right. And we went on a magical odyssey. Uh, 15, we wrote 15 offers on 15 different places until they were finally able to get a place under contract. And they were exhausted. They probably at some, I know, he was done. He was ready to give up and just say, forget it. We're just going to be renters forever. His wife was a lot stronger on the no, we are not going to be defeated. Very positive individual. And it wound up working. And I told him, I'm in this for the long haul, as
right,
long as it takes for you to get a place that you truly like. Because my biggest fear is they were just going to take something just to take something.
right.
And we saw some of those. Oh, we saw a few of those. Real award winners. Yeah. Some interesting stuff.
The top number, James Moffat today asked me, he says, what's the top number of houses that you've shown to a buyer? I said, actually, it's just slightly over 100 homes.
Mhm.
And
I have one of those.
yeah, and we stuck with it, and eventually he bought a place. But and we did make a couple offers before we get to the final one. But yeah, the first day he said, "I want to live in the foothills in Tucson." I said, "Great." I'm thinking Catalina foothills.
Mhm.
No, Catalina foothills. Look at those, but also the Tortolitas and the foothills of the Tucsons and the foothills of the Santa Ritas and the foothills of the Rincons. And are there any other mountains around here? It's like, okay,
Right.
well,
Well,
that little circuit was 100 miles.
sometimes you get going about halfway through it. You feel like the Spanish probably did looking for the lost land of Cibola.
Right.
Like,
The
What,
golden city is over the next
now,
hill.
what are we seeking here? And will we ever find this mythical creature? It's like a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I love Yetis. Great coolers.
Hmm.
All right. What do you have planned for this weekend coming up? Anything?
Man, you're the second person that's asked me that, and the events of
Because
the
I'm
last
always in
couple
your
of days,
business,
it's like,
right, John?
right.
So, we work together. I'm very invasive. I always want to know what you're doing. It's always an interrogation.
I don't know. I might cook something. I might I might go further afield. I kind of feel like I'd like to take a little walk in the mountains.
Oh, nice.
So I've been thinking about that. So I might take a little walk about. Mhm.
You may inspire me to do the same at some point this weekend. Time to maybe throw on the vest and go for a ruck. Haven't done it in a little while, and a little weighted journey wouldn't be too bad. But we have an Oktoberfest on Saturday, so
Nice.
yeah, that'll be a great time.
Well, this morning the temperature was around 59 or so, and it really made me feel like going to see the leaves and walk through the mountains, the high peaks. I mean, I grew up in Boulder, so I miss the altitude.
Very good. Well, hey, thanks again. I think this is probably a great point to wrap up.
Yep.
Want Hey, thank you to everybody who's tuned in and given me and John here a sliver of your time.
Yep.
Hope you've enjoyed this. Hope you'll like and subscribe, and I hope to see you again in the future. This is Armed and Thirsty. I'm Lloyd Fox.
John, my Jack.
We'll see you next time.